Good afternoon, everybody. So this is not my normal time for doing a Facebook Live, but I've had quite a few people ask me about our Stampin' Up trimmer, and I've also had quite a lot of orders recently for the trimmer. So I thought what I would do is go through an overview of the trimmer and how it works and how you can get the best out of it for those that have either recently purchased one or are looking for a new trimmer for card and paper. So good afternoon to those who have popped on already. Let me just get everything up on the screen. I can see what I'm doing. So no proper crafting, but a paper trimmer is a really useful tool for crafters. Not only obviously because you can cut your paper and card to size, but it means that you can make your own card blanks ready to go. So it makes it much more cost effective than buying ready-made cards with envelopes. And I'm still waiting for this to come to life, so I do apologise. So you can see down here on my table I have got our trimmer. We have it at last. So if you are an experienced craft maker, hi Liz, hi Vivian, hi Carol. If you're an advanced card maker and you've already got one of these trimmers, then you may not learn anything from here, but you're welcome to follow along. So this is the Stampin' Up trimmer. Now we did have a previous trimmer which we had to stop selling because of issues getting hold of the blades from the manufacturer. The blades are almost one of the most expensive parts previously of the trimmer. But what we have done now is released a new trimmer that came out in the catalogue last year, and it has a much better blade, a much better scoring system, and it also has a larger arm, so you can actually cut a 3 card down to whatever size you would like. So this is the trimmer. It's quite light and it has a guide bar here, so this is used for holding your paper down. And different to our old trimmer, this is quite loose, this is quite tight. If I try and lift this up, it's got a little clamp at the top. So the first thing you'll have to learn if you're used to our old trimmer is that you will need to lift it either at the top or the bottom. There's a little button that holds it into place. Now the good thing about that is it means it holds your card nice and steady, and you can press on here, but there's more of a clamp to get you going. Now mine are numbered because I have 4 trimmers that I use for classes, so they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. And across the top, if I just open this back up again, I hope you can see here, we have an inches scale and a centimetre scale running from this point here. So this is the point at which the card would be cut or scored, and you would then measure the card, which I'll show you how to do up here on the left hand side. There's also it's about 1.5 inches here that you can also put the card, which you'll see when I've got that in progress. This was much smaller on the old trimmer. We have this guide here. If I just pull this out, so it's quite stiff because it's got a locking mechanism. Now I know you can't see that all in one go, but there's over 17 inches of measurements, goes up to 43.5 centimetres. So that is the equivalent of an A3 sheet of card. So if you do buy card in A3 size, then you've got plenty of space to place that on the trimmer and cut it. Just going to tuck this out of the way. Now the nice thing is the guidelines, I don't know if you can see, quite tricky for me to tell if this is in focus, but these little guidelines go over the edge, whereas before there was a big gap. And this is also slightly wider, so that the measurement from here to here is actually 6 inches. And if I fold this in, clip it into place, from here to this line here, which is butted up, is actually 6 inches. So it makes it really easy to cut 12 by 12 pieces down to 6 by 6. So I'll just start by showing you that. Hi Claire, hi Jeanette, hi Trudy, hi Linda, Carol with an E. So I have some 12 by 12 sheets of paper, and normally what you would have had to do is pop them in and bring them along to the 6 inch mark, make sure it was nice and fitting against the top, hoping you can see that. Place the ruler down, and then we have 2 blades. If I just bring this up, we have a scoring blade, and I'm just lifting this up, a cutting blade. And the trimmer comes with one of each, one scoring and one cutting. Okay, the nice thing is that these blades go right out of the way, so you can have the scorer blade on the top and still take the full cutting blade to the top and the bottom. In other words, it doesn't get in the way, and vice versa. At the bottom there's enough of an entrance to be able to cut that. So you would line it up on the 6 inches, make sure that is pressed down, and then the blade can go either way, up or down, and you'll get a nice crisp edge. The nice thing about the new one is because we've got this edge here at 6 inches, you don't even need to measure. You can literally just put that up to the edge and cut that, and you've got an exact 6 inch square piece of card. So you're not even needing to measure it if it's, you know, a 6 inch exactly. Okay, and you can cut multiple sheets at the same time. I've cut up to 4 pieces of standard designer paper in one go without it being an issue at all. And so I'll just show you again. You can run it top to bottom or bottom to top, entirely up to you. Now if you have any questions as we go along, do ask. Oh, hi Trudy, I'm glad you're here. She's ordering one already. Bless you, Trudy. I have to say, I love this one. And of course you can. So, but there's so much more you can do with this cutter. And it's much more robust than before. So, 12 by 12 to 6 by 6 is really easy. These are all retired papers, by the way. And I'm cutting a whole lot up for my retired paper shares. So if you want any, you can get 100 sheets of retired papers for just £10. So if I've got 2 sheets of paper, just put them in, button them up against the edge, single cut straight through, and that's 2 sheets. This will also cut glimmer paper and embossed paper. Obviously, if you're doing that, the blade takes a little bit more of a hit, but the blades on this trimmer are far superior to our old one. Now, one thing I want to show you, and now I've had this trimmer since August last year. When the trimmer comes to you, it has a plastic coating on here that you're supposed to remove. Now, I've had this since August and I haven't removed the coating. I just realised. So if you go to the bottom, and I've just done this deliberately, by the way, if you go to the bottom corner, you can lift this up, and if I just open this here, and you can just peel this away. Okay, the whole thing comes off like so. So it's a bit shinier. So you can leave it on for protection. I mean, I've left it on and I've used it all that time. You can see here where the other sheet is. So I mean, this has had a lot of use. This has been used at my classes, and it's still, apart from needing a bit of a clean here, as good as the day I bought it. The blades I want to show you. These are superior blades, as I said before, and the way that they come out is that there's a little opening here. It's quite difficult for you to see. Let me see if I can put a piece of card in. Hi Patricia. Okay. Let me roll those out of the way. I'm not sure you can see any better, but there's a little channel here which is slightly wider, and this is where you'll lift the blade out for changing. Basically, it's the only time you would need to take it out, unless you're doing a lot of scoring and you didn't want to risk using the cutter by mistake. So the cutter is the dark one, the scorer is the light one. And to take the blades out, I always say to my customers, it's like flying an aeroplane. And what you do when you're flying an aeroplane is you're on the takeoff of the runway, and then when you get to a certain point, you're going to angle it up. And so when you get to that point, you want to angle it up like that. And I appreciate that you probably may not be able to see this. If I pop that in there, so that is the depth of the blade, which is at least twice as deep as our previous blade was. And that's why we get such a good cut. It also has two little carriers, and I appreciate, again, you can't really see this, so that when it's in the ruler, it's being held on both sides. With our old trimmer, it was only held on one side, so this is much more stable. And the good thing is it won't pop out. The only place it will pop out is here. And this works the same for the scoring blade. If I turn the scoring blade over, they pop this behind. Now I'm not sure what you can see of that. Because of the light, I can't really see if it's in focus. Oh yes, Carol, I know. I don't think I've taken the protective cover off any of mine. But just know that if you see a little bit of, you know, plastic here, that's because that coat is supposed to come off. But leave it on by all means. It has a coat on this part of the ruler as well. You can only tell because it's slightly duller on there to there. So this is the scoring blade, and again it's got two little hooks to hold it in place, and the same thing for putting it back in. You want to sort of, you know, drop it back down, and it will come off either way, forwards or backwards, but these blades will go right to the top and right to the bottom out of the way. But if you're doing a lot of scoring and you didn't want to use this one by mistake, just lift that one out, okay, put it somewhere safe because it's very sharp, okay, and then you've just got your scoring blade. Let me show you some scoring, and then I'll show you a few hints and tips on looking after it. Now, in terms of the blades, because we had problems with the last lot of blades, which is why we had to stop the manufacture, the blades went into very short supply and people stocked up on them, and then we couldn't get hold of them. I promise you, unless something bizarre happens, I've only replaced 2 blades in my 4 trimmers since last August, and those are both very recent. Because the blade is much deeper and it's sharp on both sides, so it doesn't matter whether you go up or down, they will last much longer. So you can buy a pack of 4 blades for £11.25, and that's the cutting blades. And I think that would probably see you through, unless you're doing a lot of serious cutting over a long period of time. I reckon that will see you through the life of the trimmer, and trimmers should last forever. The weak point is obviously the blade. I do keep the blades in stock as well. Okay, I can't sell them straight from stock, but if you ever get really stuck or you lose a blade, that's more likely. You know, you take it off and put it somewhere and then you can't find it. Then you can order a pack and I can always lend you a blade in between times. So let me show you a little bit of scoring, and then I'll show you some hints and tips. So I've got some cardstock here. This is Retired Grapefruit Grove. So if I was scoring this as a standard card, I would put this in to 10.5 centimetres. Okay, and that is half the width of an A4 card in the UK, obviously, because I appreciate American have letter sizes. The main thing is to make sure you butted it up to the top. Okay, or if you prefer, we have a scale across the bottom, so you can butt it up at the bottom. Okay, makes absolutely no difference. The nice thing is we have this guideline in the middle, so if you have a large piece of card, you can slide it along to 10.5 and then just make sure it's 10.5 on that central piece there. This is centimetres. Okay. These individual lines here are 1/4 of an inch. So if you were doing 3.5 inches, for example, which I'll show you for my square cards, then you've got this line here that you can follow all the way down. Okay, so I'm going to score this at 10.5 to make a standard size card, and just a little bit of pressure for the scoring blade will get you a nice score line. I'm hoping you can see that. Yes, it will, Trudy. And I don't know if you're centimetres or inches, but if you're inches, you've got these extra lines as well, every 1/4 of an inch. So that is scored there. And then if I want to cut that in half to create a card, let me pop my cutting blade back in. Then I go to the top for this, and I use 14.85 centimetres as my measurement. Some people use 14.8 or 14.9, which is actually the same, because if you cut one at 14.8, the other side will be 14.9 centimetres. I like to have it accurate, at as accurate as you can get in 1/2 millimetre, 14.85, and then I would just cut that through. Okay, a nice clean cut. This is not a new blade. Okay, and you'll find that they match exactly, and obviously they're going to match exactly that way because it's the same score line. When I'm cutting cards, I score first and then cut. Otherwise, if you cut this one first, you've then got 2 different cards to score, 2 lots of measurements. Whereas if you do single score line first and then cut, you're minimising your cutting, basically, and the chance of getting it wrong. If you wanted to cut it in landscape mode, bless you, Trudy, I know the feeling. I have to say this one is, you know, I mean, our other one was good, don't get me wrong, but this one just surpasses it. I mean, the other one we must have had available for, goodness me, 5, 6 years, maybe longer than that. but we did have problems with the manufacturer. This is from a different manufacturer that that manufactures for other people as well as Stampin' Up. If I wanted to do my scoring the other way around, then I'm going to put this in at 14.85 and do my score line. I tend to do it twice, just depends on how deep a line you want, and then 10.5 centimeters for my cutting, like so. And now I've got 2 cards, okay, cut and scored in landscape mode, like so. Nice and accurate, nice and straight. A lot of people ask me which way round you should fold a card when you've scored it. Now, I would say this really depends on the cards that you're using. Sometimes if you buy inexpensive card, it's very fibrous, and it wouldn't matter which way you scored and folded it because the fibres break at the point at which you fold. Our card is a higher quality card, and it's a pressed card. So in terms of which way to fold it, if this is your score line here that we've just done, for example, scored it, then what's happened is you've broken the fibres on the outside edge of this card. And by breaking the fibres down, what you then want to do is fold that around so that they're stretching, if you like, over the card. Does that make sense? So the side that you score is the side that would be on the outside. Now, if you're making boxes, of course, you can score it on both sides to get a really even pressure, especially if you've got a concertina one where you want it to go either way. Okay, but do you notice that this card isn't tearing? Okay, and that's because we use high quality card, so you can fold it either way. But my general rule, and I'm sure people have different ways of doing this, but certainly what I found is score, and that is your outside. Okay, otherwise what happens is you're squashing up on one side and you're stretching on the other, and that's sometimes where the fibres can come apart. Okay, how are we doing? Are you still with me, everybody? Brenda's joined us. Hi, Brenda. Trudy, Carol, Pat, Jen, Jeanette, Linda. So quite a few of you I know have already got this trimmer. But I have to say, for some reason, not that I promoted it in particular, but I have sold quite a lot of trimmers, so I thought I would do a little sort of how-to. I would recommend that if you're using the trimmer, try and keep it on a nice flat surface. Don't try and balance it on your knees. Some people prefer to have their trimmer this direction and then run it across here, which is absolutely fine. All I would say is these blades are double-sided, so they will work both directions. So to keep the blade nice and even, my recommendation is always just take it up, and then when you come to the next one, take it down. Okay, or do an up and down for every one. That you shouldn't really need to do. It should cut on the first cut through. Okay. What I don't want you to do is just do that with the cutting edge, bring it back, and then do that again, because you're only getting half of the use of the blade. Okay, you might as well use both edges of the blade. Okay, so a little bit of maintenance, and then I'll just show you a couple of other hints and tips. In our old trimmer, we had a cutting edge in here, and that used to come out. which is great to clean it, but if you weren't careful, it fell out when you weren't looking. And I know a number of people who actually lost the little rubber that went in here. And also, if you didn't put it in correctly, you could cut into it. On the new trimmer, this is all inbuilt, okay, and you've got slightly wider edge. Now, if you're used to our old trimmer, you will have pressed down with the blade, because the blade was quite small, to get a nice cut. You don't need to do that with this blade, and I'll see if I can demonstrate for you on this piece of card. So it doesn't really matter where I'm cutting it, but I will show you how you can use this grid on the right hand side. If you want a 1/2 inch strip, what you would be tempted to do is hold your card up here, bring it to the 1/2 inch mark, okay, drop your ruler line down, and then and then cut. And because it's so short, you do need to hold, I can't even find it now, sorry. Let me put that back again. Okay, so because it's a small area, it's not going to be held by the ruler, and you would just cut it down like that, and that is fine. Okay, but this area here is much bigger, so what I would do if I want anything up to 1.5 inches is I put my card on the left hand side and put the 1/2 inch here, because this is holding the card on the left hand side, and it will keep it straighter because you've got this whole area here that you've pushed the card up to. Okay, and so it's much easier to do a 1/2 inch like so. Now this is very accurate. I could do literally, don't even know what that is. It's much finer than the previous trimmer. Obviously it gets to a point, you can see that's not even 1 centimetre, and it's still cutting, it's 1 millimetre, and it's still cutting perfectly. On the old trimmer that would have cut it up. Now if you do it very, very fine, obviously it can just catch and make a bit more mess, because it's not got enough for the blade to get hold of. So 1 millimetre really is about the minimum. If you've got some very fine card, what you can do is start in the middle and cut up and down like so. Do it that way round. If you've got a point here, so this is traditional thing that we might do. Let me see if you can see that. Okay, if you want to cut from this point to this to create a diagonal line, just use the guideline, okay, and you can take it straight down, and even that fine point, can you see it's cut into? Now very often if you have a trimmer that hasn't got a very good blade, it would just buckle this top piece. Okay, so that's really just showing off the strength of the blade. And obviously I could cut this to make a triangle, and again I've gone straight onto that point. Okay, and then you know that those two are obviously going to be the same. So let's get rid of those tiny little pieces. In terms of looking after your trimmer, What you will want to do is keep this nice and clean. Now obviously if you do what I've done and leave the little protective thing on, it'll stay clean for even longer. But you can use an alcohol wipe or something to wipe this surface down and get rid of any glue. This numbering is encompassed inside the layer. And on the Fisker's trimmer that we had, goodness me, about 8 to 9 years ago, it used to wear away because it was sort of printed on the top, whereas this is actually encased inside this layer. So this won't wipe off. Okay. If you want to clear out this channel, which I think I've shown you on some of my Facebook Lives, then you can do it a number of ways. Just take a piece of card and run it up and down this channel like so. I hope you can see that little boat. Okay, and then if you find there's any debris, it'll get attached to your piece of card, so you can sort of draw it down to one end. Okay, and then you'll find, I don't know if you can see, it's just a tiny little bit in there. If I just lift it out carefully, it's difficult for you to see, but obviously if you've been cutting a lot of glitter card or something with bits and pieces, they can fall into this channel. So you can just use a piece of card. You could use a cocktail stick and run that down. If it gets really sticky, so if you've done a lot of cutting where you've had lots of glue and things like that, then this piece and this piece here can get covered in bits of glue, and that's not ideal, of course, because your card will go onto the glue, and then anything will stick to it. Any dirt from your fingers or anything will stick to it. So what you can do is use a cocktail stick with a little bit of kitchen roll or an alcohol swab, and or with a piercing tool, run it along there, and that will attach itself to any debris. Okay, I tend to do mine every so often. If I see anything in there, or if I'm suddenly getting an area where it's not cutting first time, the chances are it's got a little bit of glue or something stuck in the channel. So this channel doesn't come out, but I would recommend, if you're not getting a sharp cut, just to run something in there. You could use, you could use the very tip of a baby wipe, for example, with a cocktail stick. This bit here that you can see on mine has got bits of glue on it. If you can see, it's a little bit marked. Okay, so what I would use is an alcohol wipe, or the fabulous stuff that the lovely Linda gave me. This one here, Zoff, which are adhesive remover wipes, and they're perfect. What I would do is use one of those and do all of my trimmers in one, because they last a long time. But let me just show you, and this, you can clear this up with sticky stuff remover if you have any of that. Let me see if I can find a swab. So this is what I used to do. So I've got these swabs from a chemist. Let me just find my piercing tool. So this is my piercing tool, but you could use a cocktail stick or the edge of a piece of card. Thank you for sticking with me, those that are still here. I didn't really expect anybody to be around. So what you can do is just run this along the channel. Alright, so you can see a little bit of dirt on there. Okay, so obviously the cleaner you keep this, the better. And it usually tends to get stuff stuck at the, you know, the top or the bottom. But if you traditionally only use this bit here, that's probably the bit that's going to get the dirtiest. So you can see a little bit of dirt on there. And then what I will do is use this on this channel here. Now this bit can come out all together if you wish. Okay, so if you've got glue underneath, you can clean the whole thing. And I'm sorry if that's making your eyes go funny. Like so. So just give it a good clean top and bottom. So this is an alcohol swab, like you when you're going to have a blood test or injection or something. And you can see quite a bit of dirt on there. I can turn it over because there was quite a bit of glue on there. Okay, so you can clean that to your heart's content. And you wouldn't need to do this very often, depends on how much glue you've used and where it's gone. Okay, and then this just goes back in. There's little notches here, top and bottom. And in the old trim, this often used to come off, but you need to give it a helping hand to come off. Now, you may have noticed that there's some inches down here. That allows you to measure across and down for a particular type of project, and I'll give you an example of that. Now this is in inches, and that's what comes as standard. We've recently brought out a new one of these that has centimetre markings, and it starts at this point, obviously, because that's where your paper would go, and counts down this way vertically in centimetres. It also means if for any reason you lost this piece, it's very unlikely, you can replace it. And I think it's something like $3.75. It's not expensive. So let me give you one example where you would use this. Oh, fine brushes, yes. Oh, that's perfect. Soft wipes is the way to go, definitely. So if, for example, you wanted to cut an aperture in here and you don't have a die cutting machine, or you don't have something that fits exactly, what you can do is create an aperture on this card. So for example, if I want it 2 inches down, what I'm going to do is, there's a little arrow, and I know that you can't really see this, but I'm going to position this at 1 inch. Drop it down, and then take my blade down till it says 3 inches. Okay, and don't know if you can see that. There's a line on the blade. Okay, so I've got this line that is 2 inches long. Okay, I can now turn this around, line this edge up, and obviously if you're doing it accurately, you'd probably have markings on your card. Okay, and if I wanted this to be 2 inches, okay, then I just follow the marks down here. So that's at 1 3/4. So I'm going to take that to 3 3/4. Okay, now if I haven't quite caught it because I'm moving stuff around, I'm not doing it to a given measurement, I can just take that back up to that corner. Okay, and do the same on here. So I'm just lining the edge of that line up in my grid, placing my blade at the 1 inch mark down to the 3 inches. So can you see I can cut out a complete square. I'm going to turn this one over so that it's in the right position roughly for you. And then for this last one, I can just follow the line to that gap. So I'm not even measuring it now. Take it up to the top one. Okay. And now I've got an aperture in my card. Now obviously I didn't measure where that was going to be, and if you wanted it in the center, then what I would do is just draw 2 lines, one edge to edge, to get the center point. And that's because you can put the blade down at any given point, okay, to measure it accurately, and you've got this scale down here on the right hand side. So, I think that is all, unless anybody has got any questions. So I hope it's been helpful. Just to show you can cut multiple pieces of card at the same time. Literally, that's 2 pieces of card. Okay, and I could do obviously more pieces of paper. So I've got 4 pieces of paper, 12 by 12, and to make them 6 by 6, I'm just going to position them against that border, so I'm not even measuring them. This is my favourite thing about this one. And then I've done 2, I didn't know whether I needed to, and that's cut 4 sheets in one go, and very accurately. If you look at those, okay, they're spot on. So one thing I did say but I didn't show you, I beg your pardon, is not needing to push down. So if you push down really hard, and I'm trying to do it really hard to force it, I don't know if you can see, it has a very slight lip on the card. You can feel it rather than see it. And that's because I forced it down into the gap and then cut it. So this produces a bit of a sharp edge, for want of a better description. Okay, now if you're finding you get that, don't put any pressure on the blade. Just pull the blade straight down, and if you can see, that is completely flat. I can put that against it. Can you see it's not jagged, but it's forced the card into the cutting gap, and then when it cuts, it's got a little ridge on it. And I appreciate you can't see that particularly well. I bet if I sponged it you would see it. You perhaps can see that on there. So if you've been using a trimmer recently and you're finding this, it's not because the blade is going, it's because you're pushing down too hard. All you need to do literally is just move the blade up and down without the pressure. Slightly different with the scoring blade because you want an indent, so you can add a bit more pressure on your scoring blade. So there we go. Oh, hi Marlene. Just some hints and tips and an introduction to our new trimmer. As I say, it's been around since last September, but whether people are replacing ones that have that aren't working anymore, or maybe you had an old trimmer and can't get hold of any blades, then this was just an introduction to using the new trimmer, getting the most out of it, and how to look after it. That is all that I wanted to cover. I'm very pleased to say that I'm off to have my hair cut shortly. having had my appointment in March cancelled because it was the week after lockdown. So I'm very, very grateful that I have a hair appointment this afternoon. And I will be back this evening at 7 for some crafting. And I am hoping also to pop on to show you the full cards in a box, class in a box, before then, if I've got them all finalised and I have time. So thank you for joining me. Oh, 6 tips, Carol. That's very impressive. Thank you. And do share the tips. You know, they're not... if you know somebody that's having any issues, by all means, what I will do is I will upload this Facebook Live to YouTube. And if you know anybody who's looking for a new guillotine and would like some advice and wants to see it in action, then a trimmer, I mean, not a guillotine, then do share my video to them. Or if you know somebody who's having any issues with the Stampin' Up trimmer, then by all means point them in that direction too. So thank you for joining me. As I say, sorry it's not crafting, but equally as important and a good way of being able to create your own cards and envelopes in your own style and size. Thanks so much for joining me. That's okay, Marlene. I just nipped on, well, it was quickly at 2:30, but I didn't realise I was going to go on for quite so long. So feel free to replay and take care. Look after each other as normal, won't you? And I do hope you can keep crafting. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you again really soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.